Welcome. You're here at Regenerative Living with Harvey Hubbell Show and Tell. And today we have with us my good friend, Dr. Caroline. And I know who you are, but can you tell us or them who you are? Who are you and what do you do?
My name is Caroline Wilcox Ugurlu, and I am the creator of Letters Are Characters, which is a program that unites communities with literacy awareness and important things like why we need science-based literacy practices in our schools and libraries, and I help that happen.
That's perfect, and I'm glad you helped that happen. Jordo, do we want her talking to the camera or to me? Keep looking over here.
Doesn't matter.
Amy?
I think look at Harvey.
Yeah, look at me. Okay, so I don't know where to begin, but I do know you sent us a really cute picture of you. How old were you in that picture?
I think I was about 6.
So you're 6 years old. So tell us a little bit about that girl. Tell us about what is your first memory ever?
My first memory ever of life?
First memory ever of life.
That's an excellent question. My first memory ever of life. One of the early ones is when I was, even before I went to school, I helped a neighbor take care of kittens. They had went on vacation, and so I helped the neighbor care for the kittens while they were gone on vacation. And then when they came home, they said, "Guess what? You can have one of the kittens." So I ran home and I said to my parents, "I can have one of the kittens." And of course, they can't say no because I can have a kitten. So I got a kitten named Tigger, and he was orange and so, so awesome. So I loved Tigger. That was before I went to school.
That's a good memory.
Yeah, that was a good memory.
It's helping, it's being kind. That's pretty darn good. So, so that little girl, what did she wish for? What did she want in this world besides a kitten? So she got the kitten. So she's already set in life. She's gainfully employed. She's taking care of cats and kittens for the neighbors. So what was her dreams? What did she want more than anything in this world?
Well, I think I wanted what pretty much everybody wants. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to feel safe. I wanted to belong. I wanted to contribute. And I wanted to write.
You wanted to write?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're a little kid going to school, and you wanted to write. Now, I just learned something about you, about when you got up to write on the board one day. How old were you when you got up to write on the board about? So this is what Show and Tell is all about. You see, it's kittens and puppies. Am I right? Yeah. This is why you're here. This is great. But it's gonna get really good here. So, okay. So tell me about the puppy story.
Puppy?
Well, when they had you write.
Oh, yes. So I was in 3rd grade at the time, and I did not learn to read easily, nor did I learn to spell easily. And so the teacher said, go to the board and write the lovely puppy.
You wrote, they wanted you to write.
They wanted me to write the lovely puppy. And so I went up to the board, and I knew it was a collection of letters, but I didn't know what I know now, which is that every letter has a sound, and you can use your fingers to tap them out so you know which letter goes into a word, and that building is systematic with words, and that 87% of our words follow rules. So learning those rules is going to help you, will help you. I didn't know any of that.
You didn't know that in 3rd grade?
No. So I just tried to kind of picture the word in my head, and I knew there was an L there. I thought maybe there was an N. So I went up to the board, and instead of writing the lovely puppy, I wrote the lonely poopy.
The lonely poopy.
Yeah. So luckily I had a group of friends, and we could get really silly about it and laugh hard. But it was also embarrassing. Mm-hmm.
So I never asked you this before. But so you and I, we've known each other for maybe 10 years or so.
Yes.
And we did Jock's Cable Show together. We did
Yes.
some like radio stuff together
We did
because
Dyslexia the movie at the Warner
we
together.
did Dyslexia the movie. So here's my question. Are you dyslexic?
So I've never been diagnosed officially as dyslexic. My sister is. I imagine that I would be. I mean, I think dyslexia is a tricky thing to diagnose because it exists on a large continuum. I will say that learning to read was not easy for me. Learning to spell was very difficult for me. I had all sorts of compensatory mechanisms in place, and somehow I managed. But I would say I would be in that 20 to 25% of the population that really needed some systematic, multisensory, explicit scaffolded instruction. I do remember being in school and having to read aloud and trying so hard to get ahead of the paragraph I was going to have to read, to try to practice it, to figure it out so I didn't stutter and stammer. And I remember sweating, and it was not a comfortable process for me, that even into high school.
I'm not qualified to be a therapist here, but I mean the empathy that they talk a lot about people with dyslexia having empathy by understanding, like you were laughed at school, even by your friends, and you made it kind of a joke, but you felt bad. You were sweating. You didn't want to do this. You eventually ended up later in life starting a program. Now so apparently you got out of high school because you went to college, and you're a doctor. You're a doctor now.
Yeah, I was always a good student. My mother helped me because she would proofread and correct my spelling, and I had good comprehension, but I couldn't read out loud well, and I couldn't spell well. So those things I was able to compensate for, and I always got good grades. But I would say the square root rule probably applied, which means that, when you are a struggling reader or, officially diagnosed as dyslexic, you're going to have to work exponentially to the second power as many hours as somebody who doesn't. So I know I always worked very hard in school to get the grades that I did. And, I ended up mostly with A's. And then by the time I got to college, I had sort of somehow put it together a little bit better in my mind. But I definitely would have benefited from what I'm trying to give to everyone I meet.
So I'm kind of wondering how you ended up with these yellow bags and what's inside there. We're going to be talking all about that. So you're in high school, so you're getting to be a good student now. Now you kind of begin the game. You can figure out the system. And might take you longer, but what school did you go to, and how did you end up becoming a doctor of letters?
Okay, so my early education, to start in the beginning, when I really struggled the most, was St. Francis. It was a Catholic school in Torrington, Connecticut. And I think why I managed pretty well was, because I had my mom, and she helped me a lot. And also because I had really good friends that, even though it was embarrassing, when you can laugh really hard about something, it kind of, it's like crying. It kind of dissipates some of the discomfort. So that was St. Francis. Then I went into high school. By high school, I had kind of figured out and gotten a little bit better through my own persistence, I would say. And then I was able to be on the National Honor Society and, have good grades and good activities. And then I got accepted to Providence College. So I went to Providence College, worked really hard, and got to be a writing tutor. And that's where I really started to figure out what was happening. I was an English major, because I always loved stories and I loved reading and writing and I wanted to learn it. So when I was a writing tutor, I had access to all sorts of things that were in the Learning Assistance Center. So I would say I was an autodidact in that respect. I taught myself a lot about spelling rules and, punctuation rules and that sort of thing. So then I went on to get a master's degree in communication because I believe that communication is key to any field that you want to be in. And then I went on to get a PhD. So I've always loved to study, despite the fact that it probably takes me longer, or did take me longer than others. So that was kind of the journey. Do you want the journey up to the yellow bag?
You can tell me the journey up to the yellow bag. There's some interesting things here, and I'm going back to the empathy that there's a couple of things. I'm just going to keep coming back to this empathy that you've walked a mile and a mile in those moccasins of the people that you went back to help.
Yeah.
So the compassion that once you began to start figuring this out, you started figuring this out, but with your own hard work and determination, your grit. But you eventually went to university where they started giving you these pieces.
Yeah.
So so you have the component of the student, you have the component of an educator, and you also have a component as being a parent.
Yes. Yes.
So those are the three things. This is a community that we're talking about. These are the three people that make a difference in somebody's life. Your mother made a difference in your life.
Yep.
But if your mother wasn't there, if your mother was someplace else, or your mother was incapable of helping you, you might be a very different person, right?
I'm sure I would be. And also, I think empathy is so critical. If you really want to do anything with your heart and soul, you need to empathize with the people that you're serving. And my sister, she was diagnosed with dyslexia, but not till she got to college. And the suffering...
Older or younger?
Older.
Older.
The suffering for her was intense, and it broke my heart because she did internalize feelings of being less than, and she's very smart. She went on to have a wonderful career. She got a master's degree at Harvard. She worked at Harvard for a time. Very smart. With that being said, I would say that it stayed with her whole life. I mean, I think she still feels like she has to prove that she's not less than. And I see that with children too. And that's part of my mission, is to dispel those myths that make people who struggle to read feel like they're less than, feel like they're not intelligent, feel like the rest of the world is doing something and they're somehow left behind. Because it doesn't have to be that way. It's not true. So then as a mom, what happened was my son, who...
Well, you're out of college now. Are you a PhD by the time you're a mom? What came first, a MOM or a PhD?
It was very close, actually. I was I was defending my dissertation proposal when I was 8.5 months pregnant.
That's a beautiful story.
Yeah, and I spilled coffee right here on my dress and had to wear my husband's pants because I was, it looked like a big bullseye. But anyway, and then when I finally
Wait, was your husband at the dissertation?
Was he at the... Yes.
So he had no pants during this?
He had to wear jeans.
Because I don't know who I'm going to be looking at. It's like the woman with the bullseye
the woman
or
with the bullseye.
Man with no pants.
Yeah, he had 2 pairs of pants, a gray
two
pair
pairs.
of corduroys.
Often I always carry 2 pairs of pants. You make me do that.
Yeah, he had a gray pair of corduroys that I wore, and then he had to wear jeans to the dissertation so I could wear his pants and my...
So we know who wears the pants in the family. All right. All right. Go on. Okay, so you're defending your dissertation.
Defending my dissertation, and then I got the PhD 2 years later, and my son was there, so he was 2. He was a baby.
2 years old. and because his mom is a PhD and spilled coffee on his head, anointed him, and so he's an excellent reader. He just came out as the greatest reader in the world.
No, no, he didn't. So he was going to preschool and he wasn't quite getting it. They weren't teaching it. And then he started to go to Washington Montessori, and the same thing started to happen. And
he wasn't getting it, or they wasn't teaching it. They weren't teaching it, or he wasn't getting it. Which came first?
Well, I think that's a great question, and that's so important to the science, because there is a small percentage of people, or there are a small percentage. There are a
You're
small.
You're the PhD. I'm the dyslexic. I mean, well, this is how bad this gets when they're asking me.
There's a small group of people for whom reading comes so easily. They almost pick it up as if through osmosis. And they sometimes can confound what we know to be true, which is everyone does better when they are taught explicit, systematic phonics. Phonemic awareness precedes the phonics. We know that to be true. Everyone does better, but that little portion of the population confounds that. So he's at the school. There are some kids that are getting it because they belong to, but an awful lot of others are not. So I'm in the parking lot and I'm talking to parents, and I'm hearing in whispers that my son is not learning how to read. My daughter's not learning how to read. This is happening in school. I don't know who to go to. And so that began my obsession with the research, because I saw my son wanting desperately to go read to Bailey the reading dog, but he couldn't read. So he's crying and saying, "Mom, I can't go read with Bailey the reading dog," because they're only rewarding this small percentage of kids who are able to read without this systematic instruction. So I started to get upset and angry and obsessed with the research, and I couldn't put it down. So I've been researching ever since.
Wait a minute. So what was your dissertation on? You're a PhD. How did you get to be a PhD? What were you studying to get to be a PhD?
So I think my PhD is actually in consumer culture, which is a kind of obscure division of business administration. That's where it falls. But it uses sociology, psychology, anthropology, to look at, and I was a qualitative or interpretive researcher, to look at problems in their cultural context. So even though it sounds like it doesn't exactly relate, it does. Because with reading, you have to look at it in its entirety. You have to look at all of those different components that go into why we're having a crisis in the United States, and 2/3 of our kids are not reaching literacy benchmarks. And in underserviced areas, that goes up to 80% of our kids. You have to look at the problem in its entirety. So that's what I've been doing. And then as a PhD, the goal of getting a PhD is to figure out how to use those research skills that you gained to solve a problem or contribute to a research stream. To me, I always wanted to get out of the literary journals, or the academic journals, I should say, and use it to create community solutions. So that's where this came in. I wanted to apply the research. I didn't want to spend my career creating scholarly journal articles that only a few people read. And that's how you advance in academia. I wanted to actually help people, and not to say that research doesn't help people, but I wanted to directly work with people and help people.
So, which comes back to your empathy of you being a student who walked a mile or a while in those moccasins.
Yeah.
Comes back to you being a researcher, an educator, and kind of knowing stuff. But now you're a parent, and you're becoming obsessed with this research, and once you start researching it, and there's this thing called the Internet Computer Box that all the kids use. There's all kinds of information. There's all these white papers. I love the white papers you have. I told you we're putting white papers on our site. And it's all the same people. It's Marianne Wolf. It's Margie Gillis. It's the usual suspects.
Yeah.
Right. It's all of these wonderful papers that are research, evidence-based education that's out there. Mm-hmm. So you're a mom, not just any mom, a PhD mom, that decides to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And so tell us how you got from being obsessed and watching your kid learn to read, and they weren't teaching him and he wasn't reading. Mm-hmm. So how'd you get from there to here?
Well, so I started to put together the pieces of the puzzle, and that was a real aha moment when I thought to myself, okay, I can come up with something that's going to help people. Because one of the things that was kind of shocking and horrifying to me was that people were talking in whispers about reading acquisition, like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody, but my son or daughter isn't learning to read. And I'm like, okay, why are we whispering? This needs to be out there. This information,
because they don't know that they don't know 2/3 of the class are not making it to the top. Everybody's very vocal about the kid who's doing great.
Yeah.
And including the teacher, and some of my best friends are teachers, including the teacher who's like, this is my prize student, the kid who just learned by osmosis. Mm-hmm. So that's a very vocal thing. That's something to crow about. Mm-hmm. But these other folks, the ones that are failing miserably, and they have self-esteem problems. It's fun when you're in third grade and you're a girl and you can kind of laugh about it. When you're in third grade and you're a boy, you might get a little bit different reaction, and by sixth grade and by ninth grade, it's a completely different reaction on either gender and either place and race, zip code. All of those things make a big difference. So
absolutely.
So your instinct, your mama bear instinct of getting out there and talking about this is important.